Okay, Kevin, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce you and what you're going to bring to the Intertwining Medicines Men's Retreat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you want me to introduce myself? There's many different ways.
Well, how about let's get into your past in Nepal?
Yeah.
And then how that brought you here.
Yeah. So that journey seems like forever ago. It started when I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I was working in the restaurant business, frustrated, not happy, didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. Why was I here? What's life about? What am I supposed to do? And I was fortunate when I grew up, my mom and dad said, well, we don't care what you do as long as you're happy. So at the time, besides working in the restaurant business, I was also helping a friend. His father was building new homes. So I had a lot of time alone. During that time, I kept thinking about, well, all through my life, what made me happy? Like if I look back from what I can remember, what really, truly, genuine, that I could say genuinely made me happy. And all the Buddhist meditation retreats that I had been on were the ones that kind of like popped right into my mind. I'm like, I have to learn more about this. And so, let's see, this is the late 90s. So then I'm like trying to search around on the internet and I find this information for a program that was starting in Nepal. It was 5 months out of the year to train people how to read and translate Tibetan and also study Buddhism. I was like, wow, it looks really interesting. And so I decided to quit working in the restaurant, and what money that I had in the stocks that I invested in the restaurant, I sold that and I flew to Nepal. And that was not what I expected. It was probably one of the best things I ever did. It was a very interesting journey in and of itself. Had never left America. Had been there my whole life, and after the first year, so we basically had classes. So within the Tibetan tradition, the teachers, the monastic teachers that teach the monks, they have a title either of Kempo or Acharya. And they were also teaching us. So we would have a class, they would pick a text. The first year we were studying Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara. And so we would have a class where they would teach that. And then we had other classes that were teaching us Tibetan grammar and understanding how to translate as well. And so we would record the Kempo classes, which I ended up doing. And then, of course, at the end of the semester, everybody wanted copies of the teachings, which would end at that time we were using cassettes. And so it ended up being, one class was probably maybe 40 or 50 cassettes.
Wow.
And so we had a high-speed copy machine, and I would just go and lay in the office and bought the tapes in and out, just keep doing that so everybody could have their copies of the teachings at the end of the semester. And from that, the second year of the program, I became the assistant administrator. And then by so that was 1998 when that started. And by, I think it was around 2002 to 2003, we attempted, and finally, I think it took 1 or 2 years to affiliate with Kathmandu University, turn the program from just a regular Buddhist studies program to a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in Buddhist studies. And I think by that time, I was now the administrator. So I was running the office. I was handling all of the applications, I was doing everything. I was handling the finances, all of that for the whole program. And we went from 4 months out of the year to to 2 semesters. So we would start in September and run until I think it was the end of April. And then exactly what year, might have been 2007 or 2008. I think it was Columbia University used to run a Tibetan language program that ran actually in Tibet. But the Chinese, there was a huge problem. They closed off the Tibetan areas of Tibet. And so they contacted us and asked us if we would run their summer Tibetan program intensive. And what was really great is once we had joined as a university program, we were eligible to get student visas. So up until that time, and it was about 3 to 4 years' time, I would be in Nepal 5 months out of the year and back in the States the remaining time. But once we were able to get study visas, I then stayed in Nepal year-round. So I lived in Nepal year-round from about 2002, 2003 until I moved here to the Sacred Valley.
And when was that you moved here?
It's a blur. It really feels like a blur, but I want to say it's, let's see, so now it's 2020, I think it was. That sounds about right. It's like just towards the end of the whole COVID fiasco. So it'll be 5 years. Yeah, it's 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it that brought you here?
Oh, that's a very interesting and not too long of a story. It's a very interesting story. And so over the years, my roles continued to grow and morph in the monastery and working in the program. I was a head administrator, I was direct, and then it shifted over to becoming the director of finance. The problem being that I was one of the 2 people who had been there the longest. So it was, oh, we don't know what to do, go ask Kevin. You know, it was me and my other friend Joanne. It's like, go ask, those 2 will know what to do. We did everything. But it was around 2017, there was a lot of politics going on within the monastery, and I was starting to get a little stressed, a little fed up with it. I forget the exact year, but somewhere in that time frame, the manager of the monastery, and the manager of the monastery is usually one of the most powerful people in the monastery. He passed away. So there was a very interesting scenario that happened after that, and the individual that took over was not a very educated person. I won't say his heart wasn't there, but it made things very, very challenging and difficult. It was getting frustrating. I have a really good friend who's done quite a long time of retreat. And every year in November, my teacher will give a 2-week teaching that people from all over the world will come and attend. And during this time, my friend, there's a nunnery that's related to our monastery on the hillside, just outside the valley in Kathmandu, and he stays there most of the time in retreat. Then during the teachings, he comes and stays with me for like those 2 weeks. We stay up all night long, having all kinds of crazy conversations, talking about the mind and meditation and just all kinds of stuff. And he started, this is 2017 in November. So he started talking about ayahuasca. It's like out of nowhere. There's a teacher, his name's Songsar Khyentse Rinpoche.
And he's Nepalese.
Yeah, well, he's Tibetan actually.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of Brazilian students. And somehow my friend was just talking about he had been hearing a lot of his students were doing ayahuasca. And that there's a friend of his, and I had met her before, a psychologist, her name's Carrie Moran. And Carrie lives here in the valley. He's like, wow, you should talk to Carrie. You know, I know Carrie's been living in Peru for a while. Maybe you should talk to her. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Conversation's done. Teaching's finished. You know, and you've heard it, and you've probably said it to people. The medicine calls you when the time is right.
As it does.
and all of a sudden in January, I was like, hey, Graham, can you give me Carrie's email address? Something's telling me I need to look into this. So I'm like, well, okay. So he sends me her email address, and then I send her an email and say, yeah, I'm really interested in this. And she's like, so she's like, yeah, I don't see a lot of Buddhists that are really into this, but here's 5 places I recommend. Check in see which one resonates with you. And so I found the one that seemed right to me. And in July of 2018, I came to do a 5-day, well, no, it's 10-day, 5-ceremony ayahuasca retreat. And then between the time of registering and signing up, I think I probably read every possible thing I could get my hands on. Just looking at all this, I mean, I'm fairly well experienced with psychedelics from my teenage years and college, but still had no clue what I was doing, what I was getting into. And hopped on a plane and flew here, and had my mind blown away. It was really interesting because the challenge of a lot of people within Buddhism, there's aspects of it where they're talking about you shouldn't be abusing substances, and it's a really tricky thing to define, because a lot of people, in the way they've been raised, don't do drugs. You shouldn't be doing drugs. Drugs are bad for you. Any substance is a drug in one way. It could be classified as a drug. It could be bad for you. Anything could be bad for you. It's what's your intention and how do you use it? So that was kind of something in the back of my mind the whole time. And so I remember sitting there for the first ceremony, and we all drink, and we're sitting there waiting for the medicine to come on. And then it was like, for me, one of the things I've always loved was live music and live concerts. And so I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden it was almost like the beginning of a concert, because it was like the light show came up. And it was like this, and then an image of a Buddha floated down through my vision. And it was like this feeling of like, you're in the right place, it's okay. Like, oh, okay. And then just had my mind, my experience, everything taken to a level that I don't even know sometimes how to put it into words exactly, but the connections, the feelings, and what I went through. And I was like, that's really interesting. And then that's where I met Safa. Safa was the what's the word for it? That was the work I was doing for them for a while. And she was the facilitator.
Yeah,
she was facilitating the retreat, and so I got to know her during the retreat, and I was like, and for me, I was like, there's something here I'm finding is very intriguing. I think I need to learn more about this. And so through talking with her, I found out her and Felix were running diets. And I was like, oh, that seems really interesting. And so then I came back the following November and did a 2-week diet with them, just to go deeper with the medicine.
What plant did you start with?
Lavender.
Lavender, yeah.
Yeah. And that was, I would say to people, I'm going to give you a cup, and this cup is infused with this plant, and you're going to drink it. And then you do that for 3 days. And then during those days, you might be tired because you're fasting as well, but you're going to have some of the most interesting dreams you've ever had in your life. And you would look at somebody like, you're crazy. That's never going to happen.
Especially with lavender.
Yeah,
that's the cleaner.
And that was really really fascinating. And then so after that diet, I was that's where I started to hatch the plan. Maybe it's time to leave Nepal. But then I got some other help. I have a friend who's a Vedic astrologist, and had quite an amazing reading from him where it's pretty much made sense that this was a good shift to make. And so then over those next 2 years, just kind of had no idea what I was going to do, how I was going to make money. And I was just kept saving what money I had, finishing up, transitioning out of working in the monastery. And I just picked up and I moved here. Mm-hmm. And then all I knew is I just wanted to work with the medicine. After being here for about 3-4 months, then Safa and Felix asked me if I wanted to learn how to facilitate and help facilitate with them. And I was like, of course. And that was like the best thing ever. So then I spent about 1.5 years working with them before they left, facilitating ceremonies, helping hold space, and yeah.
Wow. So your first retreat, personally, what did you discover? Because some people come into it with intentions, obviously, maybe a little bit of expectation. Mm-hmm. So what were you bringing? What were you bringing into that?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's hard to say. I really I didn't have any. I tried really hard not to have any expectations. Because it's my teacher's father has a great teaching. No hope, no fear. What's an expectation? It's hope. So I'm hoping I'm going to get this, but then in fear I might not get it, and then you get all caught up in that throughout that whole. So I tried to eliminate that as much as I could.
That's a good one.
And so I don't know if I really had any major expectations. It was more like, it was almost like a blind date. You're like, I want to see who this person is. I want to see what they're about. I think that the diet in November helped more, and then the working as the facilitator helped even more. And I think for me, a lot of it was, I find this really, it's like I almost see two worlds that need some way to bridge, because it's like, this is a sweeping generalization in a way, but it's like you can see that the people who are too spiritual, they're not grounded. Call them hippies, call them whatever you want to but they're like out there. Everything's love, everything's beauty, and on one level they're right, but it's just not all of that. And you see a lot of that kind of within the medicine community. And you go over here to the Buddhist community, a bunch of freaking intellectual nerds. not all of them, but I mean a lot. There's a lot of study. I mean, the meditation and stuff's there, and you also have some of the people that it's all this love and everything, but it's a lot of it is mental work, working with your mind and everything else. Where the real spiritual work as well is within the heart. And with ayahuasca, the one thing I really, really noticed in the way it blows open the heart, but at the same time connects the head and the heart. And that's what, I feel in a way, to live a really good, proper life, those two need to be connected. The heart needs to guide you, and the heart needs to tell the head, this is where we're going, figure it out. The head's great with all of that stuff, but a lot of times when you're too much in your head, the head is trying to, even though it doesn't realize, it wants to save you and protect you, but it's actually sabotaging you by the way. And so you have to kind of figure out how to override it. But a lot of people, if you don't have that connection, it's not there. And the more and more I kept working with the medicine, I could really see that. And for me, what I found really beneficial was my background with working with the mind. and all of these teachings and the way to look at things from that perspective, I was able to be very helpful for people as I was facilitating or during the week outside of ceremonies, just sitting down and talking to them about what they experienced and whether it was overwhelming, not overwhelming, and different ways they could look at it and think about it to try and help them, wrap their head around. Because a lot of times, some of the stuff, as you know, that comes up through ceremonies can take a while to really, grab what it's trying to show you or say to you. And, having other people there to just offer insights that you can think about to see something from a different perspective. I found that very, very helpful with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's like you're helping process somebody with your own experience from your Buddhist teaching experience in that way.
Well, it's not Buddhist teaching experience, but just my experience of 20 years living in a monastery, practicing meditation, practicing Buddhism, studying Buddhism, and understanding that. Because, I don't want to say that in one way, Buddhism is all encompassing because there is the spiritual side and there is the that whole mental side. But it takes a long time to open the heart and incorporate it with the mind within Buddhism, but it can be done. But you have to kind of start with the mind first, and it takes a while. And that's where the interesting, fascinating part is where if you have that part and then you can experience the ayahuasca part and open up the heart, you can connect those in a way that can much quicker.
Yeah, similarly for me, I look back on the first time my first ayahuasca ceremony, which was 21 years ago, was February 13th, which was a Friday the 13th of all. And I didn't figure that out till way later because it was always like, when was that? But that turned into doing a Vipassana retreat about 2 months later. And that's when I saw that there was something going on there, that how useful that Vipassana retreat was for me from the first ceremony that I had. There was only one ceremony as well. And that was something that coalesced and came together very early on in my experience with that too. And that's something I've always respected is when it comes to like in regards when you are at the monastery, but all of what you were doing before the monastery as well, and all of the learning and all of the understanding and putting that into a practice actually also means living it as well. And that's a big part of the ayahuasca work too, whether you're coming from a Buddhist perspective or not,
right?
Because
from any perspective, I see the ayahuasca aspect is you hear people talk about people that are being spiritual seekers, going down a Buddhist path, going down a Muslim path, a Christian path, whatever. Those are being spiritual seekers. Ayahuasca is the same way, but you have to live it, and living it means being responsible for what you do, being responsible for your actions, your thoughts, and all of these things, and working through, whatever the process is that you're going through. And a lot of people, unfortunately, with the way we've been raised in Western society, want the quick fix. And there's no quick fix. And unfortunately, or fortunately for some, depending on how they look at it, you go into an ayahuasca retreat and it just punches you in the gut. And it's like, if you're not ready to really be open, because it's like whatever you've hidden in the back, they'll pull it out and smack you upside the head.
Yeah.
Whether you want it or not. And so it's not for everyone, that's for sure. But it can be extremely helpful if you're open and wanting to work with it.
Yeah. I don't think it's for everybody either. Especially when it comes to the shadow work side of things, which is, the stuff that's back there and it's been looming or whatever, and you just don't deal with it or look at it or know how to.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of this too. especially when you get into facilitating. And like you said, when you're working then with people that are going through this, and you have that responsibility to be able to shine a light on something in regards to somebody going through something.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, that's amazing work.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And so going back to the monastery and that time there, was there any similarity from that time going into when you were here facilitating?
What do you mean?
Like in similar ways or avenues that you were seeing, like how there's like an alchemy of then being in that realm, but then going into the ayahuasca realm.
I mean, it really, I mean, this is kind of something I've been, especially probably the last year or so, it's like, this is my favorite saying to say to people. It's like, what we think is what we create. And if you start to look at, and I'm really focused here like on Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, the practices, you're creating a visualization, you know, call it a fantasy realm or whatever, you know, but you're creating these deities that have very specific representations. You're creating a mandala all around them. You're generating this whole thing. You dissolve it to show how everything is impermanent on another level, and you bring it back. But it's like you're using your mind to generate and create all of this. And those are some of the real complex practices, but it comes back to my teacher's favorite saying, are you kinder, calmer, and more compassionate today than you were yesterday? If you can say yes, you're a practitioner. And that's the baseline. That's what we should all strive for. You know, and so you have that whole, you can create that whole magical fantasy realm, all of that stuff within your mind, but you're training yourself in a way to see that it's there, but it's not real. Ayahuasca does the same thing. And in another way, you hear so many people after retreats and stuff, they feel much more compassionate, much more open, much more loving of people. You know, so I mean, that's one a similarity in a way, which is kind of interesting.
Very. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And so after that, then when it comes to, because it can be very difficult to keep that up after a retreat, especially because then you're doing a sequence of ceremonies.
Well, it's a funny thing, and you know this as well. It's like everybody, you know, first everybody, half of them come in thinking this is the quick fix, and it's like you're always telling them like, this is just the beginning. It's like, oh, the retreat's over. Now the work starts.
Now the work starts.
You're like, what?
Right. Now the ceremony begins.
It's supposed to be fixed right now. It's like, no, we just kind of started the tune-up.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so then coming into the Qigong side of things, what's your history with that? When did that come about?
Let's see. So about 2 years ago, I mean, I've always been interested in Tai Chi and Qigong. I think it was 2016, I traveled to China to learn Tai Chi, which was one of the most interesting journeys I've taken. I forget the name of the place I went. Freaking beautiful. One of the most beautiful places I've seen. They have like, I mean, you can call them ant hills, but they were like, you know, 50 to 100 feet high and like tons of them, like everywhere. I mean, it was one of the coolest landscapes I think I'd ever seen. I know it was 2 or 3 days into being there. I stood up in my hotel room and I turned, and I never think I've ever felt so much pain in my life. I just like shot up my spine. My legs collapsed out from under me. I fell on the bed. The woman, fortunately, the woman in the room next to me, and she was still there, was taking a class where we were studying, got a hold of the instructor. He brought some people over from the hospital. The way the hallway was so small, it was almost impossible for them to even get like a stretcher into the room. Somehow they got me onto a stretcher, took me to the hospital. Then it's like communicating with doctors through iPhones. And it was so funny because it's like literally it was like, my back went out, my muscles were spasmed, they all locked up. I pretty much just needed a muscle relaxant. This doctor is taking me, he rolled me over on my side like this. And he's like palpating my kidneys. And he's like, does that hurt? I just want to be like, dude, everything hurts right now. Man. Just touch me. And he's like, oh, I think we need to take blood. And I'm like, you're not taking my blood. And it's like, finally, like, they just left me be, gave me a bunch of muscle relaxants. I stayed the night in the hospital. And I still had like 4 or 5 more days there. And then just I couldn't really do any more classes because my back wasn't so great. And I just went back home. But then 2 years ago here, I was like, I was trying to think, okay, I'm here. I don't have a job. What do I want to do? And my friend who started me on this journey, kind of in a way, my friend who's done all the meditation practice, he was telling me about a teacher of his in LA. And I looked up and they were offering Qigong teacher training program. So that was 2 or 3 sessions that were about, I think it was 2 months or 3 months at a time, where we did about 100 hours of work in each class of teaching that and learning that. And I really enjoyed that. What was really fascinating for me was the connections with, and also as I've been here, and these kind of happen almost simultaneously, Asafa, who I was working with, is also a pranic energy healer. Mm-hmm. And so she was giving classes on pranic energy healing. And then I was really sad when they left because towards the end, she was actually allowing me to do pranic energy healing work in the ceremonies on people. But when you're facilitating and in ceremonies, you start to see the energetics from the medicine and from the people and how the energy is moving. When you start working with Qigong, you're working with your energy and moving your energy and how it's flowing and moving. And there's amazing health aspects from so many different ways of that. And so those tied in together really, really well. But I also then found, and so they had me during the retreats we were running a couple times, and I really left it up to the people in the retreat how they felt. Were they too tired or not? But to do Qigong classes, because it's like you always see a lot of times, and like, this is really funny. This memory cracks me up. The first retreat we did, they had yoga classes. Mm-hmm. And they brought in this woman from Lima. She was so funny because we would do yoga class before ceremonies. And so that was like, I think 6 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And if we weren't on time, she was pissed off. And it was so funny. It's like you got a group of people that are wandering around totally like just disoriented from everything they're going through, and you're expecting them to be right on time. It was so fun. I was just laughing so hard, and just the story she would tell and her misunderstanding of drinking medicine. She was just saying, whatever you do, once you drink it, make sure you don't throw up for at least an hour, or it's not going to work. Stuff like that. And I would just cry. I just laugh so hard. But also, it's like for me, I never found I've never connected with yoga, and everybody connects to whatever they like. But I really found when you're in an ayahuasca retreat and you've been drinking the medicine, there's part of it, doing the Qigong practice, starts to help you, and it gives you tools to also work in the ceremony of if you're feeling blocked, just to help you focus back on your breathing, or to move energy in different ways throughout your body if you're feeling it blocked in certain places and stuff. And it's, with the Qigong, even for me, the Qigong also feels like a very strong heart-mind connection. And so as you're doing that work and flowing and moving that energy and practicing that, in the same sense, an ayahuasca ceremony can be very much the same thing. And so it can help you, ground you, allow you, because as we know, the tidal waves, and sometimes they're huge and the energy's coming at you. How do you stay grounded? How do you stay just firm and allow it to kind of wash over you and then flow back out of it in a sense? And so that helped me a lot. I feel my meditation practice and understanding Buddhism and things, that's helped immensely with that. But also the Qigong and the movement of the energy. And it also comes back to your breathing. How are you breathing? Look what happens when you hyperventilate. Do you focus on anything? Everything's out of control. Your stress level goes up. When you have nice, calm, slow breathing, and as soon as you're starting to get overwhelmed during a ceremony, you can easily, oh yeah, I remember, back to my breath, back to my breath, and just come back to that center. So that's, so that's part of the breath is a huge, important part of it. And you can, as you do a Qigong practice, so many things you can focus on. You can focus on the actual physical posture. I can focus on the movement of the energy. I can focus on my breath, only my breath. There's so many different ways you can do that, but they all tie in and they're all really helpful, I find, especially working within an ayahuasca retreat.
So in regards to the Qigong, this is what you're bringing to the men's retreat, and that's going to be part of the pre-ceremony section, which is usually yoga. So it's great that you brought up that yoga side of things too, because it can be really good. And I was thinking about that when putting this together. I was like, okay, so should I do yoga? Who would I work with? All that stuff. And I was like, wait a second, Kevin's here. Qigong, it's just Qigong came up. But it's also not just Qigong, because you're doing Tai Chi as well? Well, it's a Kevin blend.
No, so really, Qigong is the basis of Tai Chi. Okay. And the main way a lot of people will differentiate the two, Tai Chi is Qigong with walking.
Okay.
And so I could take them into Tai Chi, but it's really, for me, there's a set of exercises. The way my teacher refers to it, it's called the 9 phases of Qi. And so there's 3 sets of 3 exercises. And I really enjoy doing those exercises. They're really powerful. So that's usually a lot of times for retreats what I like to teach. Because to get into all the stepping and the walking and stuff, that's if you really want to learn Tai Chi and Qigong, let's do some classes. But for a retreat, the main thing is we're trying to help you connect to your body, to be embodied, to understand the energy flow within your body. So you don't have to do the stepping. All you have to do is sit there and focus on your breathing, on the movements, on the flow of the energy. And I work through all of that as I'm talking through what we're doing and showing everybody what to do. And so, and depending on how fast everybody is picking things up, we might learn those 9 very quickly. We might just do 3, 3, and 3, and then put them all together. We just see how it goes.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I really like that, because it's something that somebody can take away from the retreat as well.
Yeah,
that helps them vastly. Could help them.
Yeah. But I mean, it's you said, oh, you're bringing Qigong to the retreat, and the way I see it, I'm bringing me to the retreat.
Yeah.
My philosophy is what can I do to be of service to help others? And I'm happy to bring the Qigong, but I'm also happy to bring all of this, everything that I've learned up till now, and offer that in any way I can to the people that are there that can support them to help them grow and have a positive experience through what they're doing.
Yeah. So much of it is your presence and everything that you bring with your presence.
I don't know how much of that
what
there
you know,
is,
and
but we'll try.
Yeah, of course. That's the beauty of it. Yeah, wonderful. And so I was thinking about when you were talking about how it can help during a ceremony. What would that look like for somebody? Because just to say, because typically when you're doing Qigong, you're standing.
Yeah.
But in ceremony, typically not standing.
But here's the other thing, and this was always great throughout the whole time I went through my teacher training program. You don't have to be standing. You know, you can be laying down. You can be sitting. So whatever, you know, and that's the thing. It's like, so whatever the exercise is that we're doing, there's a way to do it standing up, and you pretty much can do the same thing sitting down.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing laying down. But you also, you know, like I was saying, there's ways to just focus on the breathing, or there's ways to focus on the energy movement, you know. And so if you just like, oh, I'm totally overwhelmed right now. Okay, I just focus on my breathing. Or I could even think of that exercise if I wanted and say, well, how would my arms move? I don't feel like I can move my arms, so I don't have to physically move my arms, but in my mind, I could see the energy flowing that way. Or I could see my breath as I inhale, see the energy going this way, and then exhale the energy going that way. You know, so there's many different ways to tie that in for somebody. And a lot of times, and what I'll try and do as I'm teaching it is give these little tips or insights, you know. I think the easiest one, and for most people, it's remembering if you start to feel really overwhelmed, come back to center, come back to the breath. You know, pick the tip of your nose or pick a point out here and just come back to that. Slowly inhale and slowly exhale, you know, and helping them also realize it's like you can also, another way you can look at it is I'm going to inhale all of the positive energy and I'm just going to exhale and let go of all the negative energy that I'm feeling. And as you know, when you're in a ceremony and you get hit like that and you find yourself to do that, it's really fun in a way when you're like, wow, that works. You know, it's like, and I just let it go, and I allowed to let it go, because a lot of times, and this is with anything, but that's where the fascinating part with like Qigong is, because you can get into the whole health aspect of it, all about reducing stress, you know. And if you think about, you're going through a very stressful experience in a ceremony. And well, what happens a lot of times when you're stressed out? You tense up. And when you tense up, how do you let go of things? How do you release things? So that's the other interesting side within the Qigong, because if you can relax and you can start to train your body and teach yourself how to relax, then when things get tense, you might tense up a little bit, but then you're like, no, wait a minute, back to the breath. And it's, you know, you're habituating your body as well to learn how to relax, because so many people, they don't have this, and that's why you see stressed out sick people all over the world, because they're constantly stressed and they don't know how to release or relieve their stress. And obviously it takes time practicing that, but as you know, do that 3-4 times, each ceremony, hopefully you're gonna have that muscle memory, that mental memory, that hopefully can help you to start, oh yeah, remember we should do this, and remember to come to this, and just breathe nice long. We like to say LSD breathing. Long, slow, deep.
That's great.
Works perfectly.
And in there too, there's a learning that somebody can experience between reactivity or response. Two different things. Which is like a bit of a graduated thing, going from reactivity and then actually seeing that through repetition, obviously, and like experience, you tense up, Kevin's words come into your mind, okay, the guidance or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then going into, okay, hold on a second, I have an opportunity to respond to this in a way, and I have agency in this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's where I come back to as well. What I like is, like I said it earlier, and I repeat this to people so many times over: what you think is what you create. Where's your mind? Not even what you speak. Like, what do you think? Before these ceremonies, what are you thinking? What are you saying about yourself? All of those things. Through that thought process, the reality that you see around you is manifested. And it's so important to, I was like, Joe's like, people just need to grow up and take responsibility for their actions. It's like being a little bit of a school teacher in a way, but it's like, really, it's like your thoughts are your responsibility, and you've been habituated, and many people, and some through unfortunate, terrible traumas, others through whatever, to view their life in a certain way, and they have these habits that they're going to keep repeating and repeating, and they need to learn ways to let go of those. But one of the things also, it's like, if you don't realize and start to see that, in a sense, my mind is what controls those, then you don't even realize that, well, I could change my mind. And it's not going to be easy, but if you immediately realize I can change my mind, half the problem's gone. Now you just have to work through the process of changing your mind, and learning the tools to help you do that over time.
That's perseverance.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that comes up when you start working with ayahuasca in a semi-consistent, consistent basis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's just, you can't really avoid it as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it comes at the same, within Buddhism.
Yeah, I was going to get to that too.
Because the longer you practice, the goal is to hopefully, because you're all trying to purify all of this negative karma, all the negative karma you created up over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. Well, what does that mean? Constant self-reflection, constant, and this is what I find fascinating in a way. It's like, with that, it's like, it's like, all my emotions are here on the shelf, and it's like, I have a lot of anger issues, and it's like, here's my anger, polish it all up and everything, and it's like, I worked on my anger today. It's actually really easy to do that, but now here you drink the ayahuasca. you can't escape it to a certain. I mean, you can. It's not like it just beats you down. You could say to the medicine, "This is a little too much," but it's going to put it front and center and say, "This is something you need to deal with." Where it's a little harder as a meditation practitioner to push and push and push yourself to really go and work with all of those emotions, but through that perseverance, and if you would continue to do that, that's what it's all about. It's like learning and growing from all of those experiences, and the ayahuasca can accelerate that. That doesn't mean, it's that challenge of, yes, you can learn a lot from it, but then what are you going to do after it? Because that's the next step in the game. Is like, well, I learned all of this stuff. And then the hard, challenging part is you see everything from a whole different perspective now, the world. And are you going to choose to change? Because the way you were before, your habits and everything from before are not going to serve you any longer. But you're so habituated, a lot of times you can tend to fall back that way. And it's, that's the rough road, the challenging road to run down afterwards, because you've seen everything in such a different way, but you also have to start to take the responsibility to change yourself. Because if you change yourself, things can be better, but it's up to you.
Yeah. And that takes time, and that first part can be really unsettling. Not even just the first part, but there's like a period of that. It's different for everybody.
Of course. Yeah.
And that is obviously necessary, because on the path of the mind and the heart, and going into, it's like practicing self-love. And that's something that needs to start as a seed, and then you need to nurture it, and then it needs to grow. And you have to take care of it the whole time.
Yeah.
That's real dedication.
I mean, you touched on the number one thing also, in a sense. It ties into the what you think is what you create, but it's self-love. Plain and simple. It's like, how can I love anyone else if I don't genuinely, truly love myself? And then loving myself means everything. All the icky crap, all the nice stuff, the whole shebang.
All of it.
You know, and that's so important. And it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
I think the medicine's really helpful if you're open to working with that, to helping you learn how to start to do that.
Yeah.
But that's the other challenge a lot of us have, with the way we've been raised in society, so self-judgmental. You know, always judging ourselves and everybody else, and judging and judging and judging. You know, and that's one of the things to get over, is to not judge the ceremonies, not judge it, experience it.
Yeah.
What is it trying to show me? You know, because it's like we always get caught up, is it good, is it bad? And it's like labeling good and bad. Some of the worst bad experiences in my life are some of the ones I've learned the most from.
Yeah.
You know,
they've been the best.
And, yeah.
Which is this thing that happens too. It's like,
right.
Wait a second. That's a whole rabbit hole.
Of course.
Well too, is just part of the medicine. It's like, bad. What does bad even mean? I don't know. It's because you're kind of rewiring things through experience. And the thing you brought up too is like, it's like judging the experience, for sure. That's a very common thing.
Yeah.
Just judging the experience, and getting away from that by just allowing it to just be in that sense, which obviously takes work. To be able to get to a point like that, to just be like, or to be able to see what you're doing even in that way. Like I'm judging the experience of the experience even. And so when it comes to forgiveness, that seems to be a big part as well, especially when it comes to going into one's own shadow side. You know, you're doing the shadow work, and all these things are coming up, and then that can be a prime time for judging things from the past that maybe one has experienced or done to other people. They've had it done to them. And so forgiveness in all of this, what does that mean for you? Because there's like that's part of the mechanics too.
Yeah, but I mean, the forgiveness is it. I mean, I feel that's something between you and yourself. You know, where you know, a lot of us, for some reason whatsoever, we get caught up in something. We did something at some point in time, and it hurt somebody or it hurt us. And we created that situation where we feel bad, we feel horrible about it. And, you know, so do I continue living my life feeling bad and horrible about something that's happened? Or do I, you know, man up in a way, you know, stand up and say, okay, yeah, that was wrong, or that was a mistake. Have I apologized to whomever I've harmed? And it doesn't necessarily have to be face to face, but have I even just put that out to the universe, to that individual? I'm truly sorry for any pain, any suffering, or whatever I've caused you. That wasn't my intent. I acted immaturely or in the wrong way or whatever and caused that situation, and I'm truly, genuinely sorry. And then, you know, allow your, you know, because it's about allowing. You know, because it's like, I feel horrible about it. I feel horrible about it. And then you just hold on to it. Well, okay, you're not allowing yourself to forgive. you know, and you have to get to a point where you can just allow yourself and say, past is past, you know, that's done, you know, but it's like, we all live in this weird way where it's like, you know, the past isn't done because he's an asshole and he did this to me and he did that to me, or you know, and it's really funny.
Yeah,
it's like you know, it's that whole part of that whole dualistic conundrum that we're stuck in, where, you know, and like from the Buddhist perspective, there only is now. You know, that's the only thing that's happening is right now. Our mind and our memories keep us stuck, like there's this past and oh, there's going to be this future, but it really only is now. So how we work with all of that shapes the now. And so it really comes down to is allowing your, you know, you want to, as much, if you have all these, any of these issues or problems, it is allowing yourself to forgive yourself. If it's harming somebody else, apologizing to that person, you know, and initially it might just be sending that out to the universe, sending it to that person. If you still know the person or whatever, and you feel comfortable to contact them, you know, you can do that as well. But it all starts with you, you know, and just allowing yourself, if you're having those type of feelings.
Yeah. I was getting an image of like, and I can't, it's like something I've heard before in the past of like when there's like a self-deprecation going on, or somebody is stuck in a place where they're not at the point of having self-forgiveness. It's like being in a cage, but the door is open. There's the door's always open. Like the bird is, I think that's what it comes from. It's like the habitual state of a bird that's been in a cage, and you can open the door of the cage and the bird's not going to leave. And a lot of things kind of are like that in the human psyche. Yeah, that's wild. And then for the retreat itself, and as a men's retreat, do you see your method being any different because of that, or no?
Not really. I mean, no. I mean, you just, for me, it's like all I try and do, if I'm in ceremonies or if I'm facilitating, if I'm teaching or whatever, is to come and be as present as I can, as open as I can, and bringing an energy of hopefully stability and support to do whatever I can do to help the people that are there in whatever way they need, you know. Yes, your energy is going to be a little bit different. It's all men, but it really, in terms of how I approach it, you know, it's not much different. You know, you're just dealing with a different wavelength or level of energy from people. You know, you know, because it was all women, it'd be a different set, and when they're combined, then it's all another
intertwining medicines. Yeah. So presence has been brought up a few times already, and so all we have is now. In that aspect, that's really important. That's such a thing that comes into the ayahuasca realm, and bringing that into practice while, like we've mentioned, been talking about, is like when there's any kind of struggle or any kind of hardship, things come up during ceremony, and always coming back to the breath. It's one thing. If as a facilitator and somebody shines their light, I go up to them and they're having a difficult time or difficult moment, because I say moment because everything changes.
Of course.
And usually for me, it's just breathe. I say that, just breathe. Let's breathe. That's so important. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Qigong practice coming into this space.
That makes two of us.
Yeah. It is something that would be very useful if it was out there more as well.
Yeah.
Because yoga, nothing wrong with that. It tends to be also just yin yoga. It's just coming in, into a gentle space to prepare for the ceremony, before the ceremony, in that way. And so to be able to ground in and focus and calm and all those things as well.
Which is great. But for me, it's like, I was just thinking, it's like, that's also in a sense what you're doing with the Qigong. But I think there's also an aspect of it of helping people seeing how, because like for me, I never found the yin yoga we did before that first retreat, it helped me kind of relax or whatever. Part of it might have been the instructor, but it was, I didn't feel how it benefited me further than just being like a little bit calm when the retreat started. Where I don't know, for me, I feel like going through and explaining, really focusing on moving the energies and the breath and all of these things, and explaining it in a way to correlate it into this can help you, throughout your ceremony, whenever, is I think it's because it's like when you walk in the door and you sit down, you drink that medicine. What's in your toolbox? What do you have to work with this? And I always loved when Felix used to say, "This is a 50-50 ball game." It's like the medicine will come here, and you need to meet it halfway. And so, okay, well, what do you have? Yes, your intention can just do that. But then after that, what do you have to really work with that? But a lot of people, if it's their first time drinking, they have no idea about anything. But just to start. And so for me, I feel like as doing that as well helps people, can help give them more tools and more ways to work with the experiences that they're going through.
Yeah, very foundational. And that's really necessary. That's why I'm really excited about it as well. Yeah, that piece about, like what you brought up about what Felix said, it's a 50-50 ball game. And my perspective is like you have to reach the medicine. The medicine is actually reaching you. Sometimes it feels like you've got to go a little further than the medicine's reaching out to you. You've got to go like 70%, 80% or whatever. And having that, because our lives are dynamic and we're dealing with things all the time. And that's actually no different from what can show up in the ceremony. That's part of the teachings of it. Yet it's a bit like, as I'm not a Trekkie, but like the holodeck in Star Trek. It's like you can go into this holodeck thing, and it's this hologram that you can experience anything for teaching, right, and for learning. And so that's, in some ways, ayahuasca can be very much like that. And having the skill set, or having something like the tool of, not to call Qigong a tool, maybe that's not the right way, but I'll just say the tool of Qigong. And you can take that with you outside, though. That's the other part, is like you have a skill set to use anytime you feel like you need it.
Yeah.
You could be sitting on a bus, whatever. Yeah, and that's wonderful. Yin yoga, sure, you can bust that out if you want to. But there's that piece too, because you brought up the visualization aspect of it when I asked you, okay, so it's ceremony, we're not going to be standing up and doing this. It's not the best idea. But you can be laying down, not moving, but you can visualize it. Yeah.
I mean, I just, there's, it was more of a Tai Chi movement. And I remember this movement, and there was one ceremony where I was just, it's got a lot of stepping to it, but I remember just sitting there doing the whole thing, just in my seat, nonstop. And the way the energy was moving and flowing and working, and so, I mean, it's not, and that, I mean, because it's like a lot of what I was being taught and how we were being teaching, they were teaching people a lot because they're looking at the rising age of the population in America. They're also looking at veterans, and even veterans that might be paralyzed or whatever. And it's like they're teaching you how to teach. If you have somebody who's 70 years old, they might not, I'd say 80, or whatever. They might not be able to stand for a half hour, 45 minutes.
So, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, mobility issues.
But they can sit down and do the whole practice, and that's the great thing is as you do Qigong, whether you do it sitting, standing, laying down, it benefits you mentally and physically in so many ways. You mentioned something a minute ago, simplicity. It's like we like to make things complicated. And the best things, it seems, and from my perspective in the world, a lot of times are the simple things. And they actually, for some reason, we think they're the hardest. But if you actually start to do them, the benefits you gain from them are immense, and just taking even 15 minutes a day to do some simple breathing exercises, Qigong movements with the breathing and stuff, is going to benefit you, in so many ways. I love it. I need to be doing it more these days. Haven't been doing it as much, but that's my problem. But it's really, it's probably one of the best health exercises, and you're not in the gym schlepping weights and, you don't have to do all of that. You can do that even with
that as well.
You can, you can, if you have a movement that's like this, you can, put that tension, and there's so many different ways you can adapt to it. And stuff. Yeah, it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I really like the energy movement side of it, because it's like that then is like you have the agency to go from being in a certain place or space or way of feeling energetically or mentally, and you can move it and learn to work with that.
Exactly. And for me, I was like, when I really kind of started to connect, when I was sitting in ceremony, it was just like, this is super interesting, because it's like, because it's like so many people don't feel. Number one, a lot of people don't tune into their energy bodies or their energetics very much, or they're not open and into it. And it's like, now here you're thrown into a world where it's all there. So if you start to help show them how to take that agency, that actually you do have the control over that, and it's a matter of tuning in with your heart and then really feeling it. And allow,
Some people can be really uncoordinated that way. You can be a really good athlete, but you can be uncoordinated.
Of course, but it's like, how did somebody get to be a really good athlete? Repetition. They practice. And so it's the same with all of these things. It's just a matter of being introduced, and when you're introduced, you're going to be like a little kid. Stand up 2 steps on your face. Stand up 3 steps on your face. And finally, and it just, and that's and the whole key too with all of this stuff that we do is, how do I do this and not judge? Say, oh, I'm so horrible, I'm being so bad, and it's like, I can't do it. It's like, well, right now you can't do it, but that's okay. Keep practicing. And take a joy in the falling on your face. Take a joy when you actually are running, and it's like all about being joyful, enjoying it, laughing with that whole experience. But we're not trained to do things like that.
So it's not about perfection.
Nothing's, that's the whole thing. It's like the more if you're a Buddhist meditator, the more you're somebody who's really genuinely, seriously traveling down a spiritual path, plant medicine, pick any other religion you want, you start to realize it's not about perfection. The journey is the whole aspect of it. And what are you learning from the journey, and how are you becoming a more kinder, more calm, more compassionate human being every single moment? That's my view. Whether it's a right view, wrong view, I don't know, but that's just through everything I've been through. That's where my mind lends towards.
And from what you've experienced with other people.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing.
So,
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. That was great.